Good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us for QI Power Hour this morning. It's a lovely Friday here in Saskatoon. I'm Chelsea Schwartz with the Health Quality Council here in Saskatchewan. And I thank you so much for sharing an hour of your time today. I know that it's a busy time. Holiday season is about to start up. Everyone has things on the go. So we very much value you taking part in our learning community again this month. For anyone who might be joining us for the first time, QI Power Hour is a free monthly learning webinar series hosted by the Health Quality Council. And we bring together improvers from a variety of sectors. So early on, it was primarily health, but in the past couple of years, we've been delighted to see that community grow to other sectors outside of health as well. So just a note that Jocelyn Watson from HQC is joining us as tech support this morning. So if you do have any questions or need any support with your tech this morning, feel free to reach out through the chat and Jocelyn will help troubleshoot with you. And so as many of you know, June is National Indigenous History Month. And I've been on my own personal learning journey, as I'm sure many of you have been over the past number of years, continuing to learn the truth about our Canadian history, the hard truth oftentimes, and its impacts on generations of Indigenous people. I've been identifying the actions that I can take, not only personally, but also in my role at HQC towards reconciliation. And so I've been doing some reflecting to craft my own personal land acknowledgement that I'd like to share with you this morning. So as I mentioned, my name is Chelsea Schwartz, and I'm joining you today from my home office in Warman, which is located on Treaty 6 territory, the traditional land of the Dakota, Lakota, and Nakota, and the homeland of the Métis. I recognize that I'm a settler to this land. I grew up in the southwest corner of Saskatchewan in Yorkton, but my ancestors originally settled in Nova Scotia. They were from Scotland, Ireland, France, and the Netherlands. And today I'd like to pay my respects to this land and its traditional caretakers. And I too commit to taking care of this land that I call home and all the people living on it. I recognize the many privileges that I have been afforded and commit to using this privilege to contribute to a new shared future where all cultures can thrive and all people have what they need to live healthy lives. And so I invite you, if you know the traditional lands that you're joining us from today, I invite you to share that in the chat now. And if you're unsure, but would like to know, Jocelyn is sharing a link to a place where you can learn more about the traditional lands that you may be joining us from. And so this, like all others before it, will be recorded. So if you do need to hop off early for any reason, just know that this session is being recorded and you can access it after the fact from our HQC website. We also invite you to check out past topics that you may have missed and share this link on with your colleagues and others you find might be interested in it. And while you're on our website, we also welcome you to sign up to our QI Power Hour newsletter so that you are kept to date with all of our upcoming sessions. And so as I mentioned, we've been delighted to see the spread of QI Power Hour over the past number of years throughout our home province of Saskatchewan. But also across Canada. And I know that we have a number of folks joining us from a number of different provinces this morning. So we have participation from BC, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Ontario, and Quebec, as well as a couple of international folks joining us this morning. So thanks again for taking an hour of your time to spend with us and your commitment to improving the sectors that you work in. And so I've been mentioning that chat. So if you're wondering where the heck is that chat, just want to let you know how you can participate on the call this morning. So you'll notice that if you hover your mouse towards the bottom of the screen, it will launch that little toolbar towards the bottom. So just click on the chat bubble and it will launch the chat panel to the right-hand side of your screen. And then I'm just going to ask you to send your comments to all participants so that everyone can join in the conversation. So I see a number of you have found the chat. I see folks joining us from Treaty 4, Treaty 6. Excellent. Perfect. Welcome, everyone. If you are a Twitter user, we also welcome you to take part in the conversation over Twitter today. So you can use the handles QI Power Hour, HQC Sask, and our guest speaker today, Brad, who I will tell you about in a moment here. His handle is InfoRidiculous, and you can use the hashtag QI Power Hour. So with that, I am delighted to get on to the main show here. So we are delighted to welcome this morning Brad Bellegarde, and Brad is so interesting. I just would love to hear more about some of your experiences, Brad. He is a member of the Little Black Bear First Nation and is a nationally published journalist, having written articles featured in the Globe and Mail, Toronto Star, Ottawa Citizen, Huffington Post, and CBC. Brad currently works as the Cultural Diversity and Indigenous Relation Advisor of City of Regina. But in addition to his professional accomplishments, Brad, also known as InfoRed, is a nationally recognized hip-hop artist, having performed live on national television, as well as in Vancouver for the 2009 Cultural Olympiad, and also for His Royal Highness the Prince of Wales and his wife, the Duchess of Cornwall, during their 2012 royal visit to Canada. So I'll pass things over to you, Brad.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me? Everything's good?
Yeah.
Excellent. Haamatakiape, Changusha Ganmani Magiabe, Inamakota. Imakiape Wopta Katioshpae, Mitakuye Ina, Cheyakin Tioshpae, Mitakuye Ade, Little Black Bear First Nation. Good morning. I was reading the comments there, and I just wanted to say, Robin Hilton, that was a great comment. I love how you used Anishinaabeg, Nehiawak, which is the Plains Cree. There's Nakota, Lakota, Dakota, and the Métis. I just wanted to acknowledge that. Thanks everyone for sharing some where you are participating from, but more so those words. Rather than saying Cree and Soto, the Cree and Soto are kind of like those are the English terms of a culture, of a peoples. And when you say Nehiawak or Nehiao, that's the actual nation. So when we talk about this nation to nation relationship, that was the spirit of treaty. That is what we're talking about. The Nakota, they're a distinct nation, and I am Nakota. The Lakota, the Dakota, the Nehiyaw, the Nehiyahuac, the Anishinaabeg. Those are distinct nations. So I really want to give you a thumbs up there, Robin, for sharing the actual terms. But I just wanted to start out by saying good morning. Hope everyone is doing great. Thanks for taking the early morning QI Power Hour. And I think it's a fitful time of the year to do these types of talks because it is National Indigenous History Month. But I always start out my presentations with a spoken word performance. Usually not sitting down, but I'll do it sitting down just for you guys. Lifestyles of a native in a nation filled with hate. It's getting harder nowadays to put this food up on my plate, so I'm hungry. Steady on the grind to eat a beat, writing scriptures for the future, taking kids right off the street. The time has arrived to unify and stand together. In the midst of all this chaos, we'll survive another winter, like we always do. Because history repeats. Let it echo through the valley, what I write is what I preach. So unique, my speech designed to teach and reach the youth a piece of you inside the minds of peeps so they can keep it true. Steady on a hustle with the bustle on the back. To the chicken dancers, what up? Let's bring that culture back. Satisfactory. Scripture from my faculty for family. I got it, team. The realist, how we kill it ain't no fantasy. Sanity's demanding me to be the man I am. And the man in me is telling me to be the man I can. Voiceover, pen to the paper until the end. Dark souls finding the light within what is said. This is for the people. Unification is needed. Stop the infighting. Now is the time for us to believe it. Now, I'll just tell you a little bit about myself here before we get into the bread and the butter. Now, I grew up in Regina, Saskatchewan. Born, raised, went to elementary school in Regina, went to high school in Regina. Excuse me. And now my experience is as a First Nations kid. Back then I was an Indian, so I still say I'm an Indian because regardless of how we change the terminology of individuals, as long as we have the Indian Act set in place, my card says Certificate of Indian Status, and I have a number. And our numbers or would identify us as individuals within that Indian Act. So I'm comfortable with the term Indian. I don't find it offensive because that's technically what I am on paper. Now, in elementary school, I was always the only Indian kid, the only First Nations kid. Kindergarten, there was a few throughout the school. There was probably about 8 or 9 of us in my school, and they were spread out through all these different grades, from grade 1 all the way to grade 8. And I think the experiences that I grew up hearing from residential schools is what I would call my privilege. Now we hear this term thrown around a lot. Privilege. There's different types of privilege. Now, for example, if I was, this is what you call just cloth. Now, if I gave this to an elder, I know what that means. That's what you would call privilege. I have a different sense of privilege, but this privilege is what we wouldn't call privilege in Indigenous philosophy and Indigenous worldview. It is actually just knowledge. It's our way of life. It's a way of being. It's the way that we learn to exist. And now, with the advancements of technology and the advancements of the internet and just the way of life is simply different. We've actually become accustomed to adapting, and we're trying to find a way to peacefully coexist in this environment that we call Canada. Now, I consider myself to be Nakota Nehiel first, rather than Canadian. So if I introduce myself to someone, I will not say that I'm a Canadian. I will tell them I'm Nakota. And I think it's very important for us to recognize that when we talk about building relationships. Due to the unfortunate events of our history, we've been put in a position where we have inherited a society that has a lot of, I wouldn't say obstacles, I would say a lot of opportunities to right the wrong. And by having conversations like this, I'm wearing an orange shirt today, because I didn't do any laundry. No, I'm just kidding. I wore an orange shirt today because every child does matter. And if you have children, if you have nieces or nephews or grandchildren, or you're expecting a child, or you want to have children, I think it's very important for us to create an environment in society that will be very welcoming, but more so safe. And those safe environments start with conversations like we're having today. Now I'm going to tell you a story. So when I was in grade 9, it's a big difference. I went to Miller High School, and it was going from a school of about 200 people to a school of about like 800, 5, 6, 7, 800. I don't even know. But then again, there wasn't that many Indians there. There wasn't many First Nations. So in grade 9, after lunch I had music class. Now I like music. I didn't write raps. I was not a rapper at that time in my life. And I walked into school in my classroom in grade 9, and I looked around and I was thinking, man, there's not another First Nations person here. And I looked way in the back, and there was somebody with brown skin like me. And I'm like, I'll go sit beside this guy. He's got brown skin. We can be friends. So I sat down beside him, and he honestly, the first thing he did was he turned to me like this. Hey, do you like rap music? I said, yeah. He said, well, go home. Go home and write a rap. I'll go home and write a rap, and we'll come back tomorrow. We'll see you could write a better rap. That's all he said to me throughout that whole day. I was trying to talk to him, and I was kind of disturbed by that rudeness. But at the same time, I got home and I started thinking about it. I'm like, man, this guy is kind of cool. He didn't want to talk to me. I'm gonna write a rap. So I sat at home, and that was the first rap I ever wrote. I sat down in my basement and I wrote this rap, and then the next morning or the next afternoon, I went to class. And this was before the interweb, before we had FaceSpace and MyTalk and all those other apps, Snapchat, Chit Chat, or whatever it is. I'm too old for that stuff. He said to me as soon as I got there, he looked at me again. He said beside me, "Did you write your rap?" And I said, "Yes, I wrote my rap." So I pulled out my paper and I handed it to him. Then he looked at it and he was like, he pulled his paper out, gave it to me. I read his. Mine was better. I'll say that right now. Put that for the record. And he's like, All right. I dig it. I like it. We could be friends. My name's Jude. Now, Jude is I always give him as much credit as I possibly can because if it wasn't for my friend Jude, and I know if Pat is joining us today, which I'm sure he is, um, Jude was a big advocate of pushing me to keep rapping. So I still do it today, and that's 20 some odd years later. So I have to tell that story as much as possible. And what that showed me though, the reason why I'm going down this avenue of telling you about relationship building and how that helped me. So as opposed to learning how to build relationships through culture, um, the traditional ideology of what culture is, what I did was I started embracing a culture called hip hop. Now, for me, it worked for me because it was something new. I was inspired by it. It motivated me to read. I used to read a lot of different words in the dictionary and just read everything I possibly can and then try to write that in a rap. And what that helped me to do was explore my own, I guess, my own confidence in a sense, because I was always shy. And being First Nations, I was always taught as a kid to be aware of my surroundings, be aware of stereotypes, be aware that I am not going to be recognized as the same as the majority of the individuals in my neighborhood. So my school at that time, St. Augustine and then Miller, the First Nations kids or the Indian kids they were the minority, literally the minority. There was not many of them. Now we have seen a dynamic shift in the population, and we see a lot of the younger demographics increasing exponentially compared to any children of European descent or any children of any other ethnic descent. First Nations kids are the fastest growing demographic, and I think there's definitely a need for building relationships. So one thing that rooted me in learning my culture was in my summers I would spend time on my reserve, my mother's reserve. Unfortunately, because of the Indian Act, First Nations people all have one reserve. That's all we can be registered to. But I want everyone here to be aware that First Nations individuals come from more than one reserve. They come from more than one, I would say in my culture, Tioshwaye, but more than one reserve. So Little Black Bear is my reserve, but I spent more time on my mother's reserve, which is Carry the Kettle or Chega King. And that has been ingrained in my upbringing as my friends would go on summer holidays. I'm sure if you have kids that they're looking forward to next month, it's like summer holidays. Yeah, we get to go on holidays. The restrictions are going to start opening up. People are going to start traveling. My friends used to always travel, and I would have to go to my grandma's house, which is approximately 80 kilometers east of Regina, for the whole summer. Not like, oh, I'm going there for a weekend. It was like end of June to the middle of August, I would be there. And I would have to do things such as picking berries, picking flowers. Oh, it wasn't fun for a kid when you hear stories from your friends saying, "Man, we went down to Orlando." I'm like, "What? You guys went to Orlando? What did you do?" I went and pick berries for 8 hours during the day in the day under the sun. It was not an Orlando experience. But let's take it back now to what I was talking about, the privilege side of it. I now feel privilege. It took me about 35 years to focus on it, the positive in that. But I see the value in that, and I see the importance of understanding that. So now, as me and my partner, we raise someone, he's I'm sharing, we're sharing the culture as much as possible. By doing that, he doesn't like it. He doesn't enjoy all the things that we have to do, but he's learning it, and hopefully that will sustain his belief in who he is and foster that pride that we need to re-engage and reignite in the youth that we have in our communities today. So I'm going to share a my screen with you, and it is a PowerPoint presentation. And just give me one moment. There we go. There we go. Now, okay, so I want everyone to just take a look at this image and see that that image behind is some place that I actually traveled to. Now, it's called a medicine wheel. And when I was young, I didn't understand the importance of knowing these things. This medicine wheel right here is called the Bighorn medicine wheel. Now, the Bighorn medicine wheel is the largest known medicine wheel that has been found in North America. It is in Wyoming. It is on top of this mountain, and we went up to the top of the mountain, had to walk around, and there's lots of different offerings. Like I was showing you the cloth. There was lots of different cloth ties around there. There's lots of tobacco around there because it is a very monumental space and important to what we call the solstice. Now, Monday, technically Sunday, but Monday we'll be celebrating National Indigenous Peoples Day, also the first day of summer, and the solstice is a very important time. So to share with you the importance of what a new season means, for in our belief, well, my belief as an Indigenous person, we believe that every season is like a new year. So everything that happened in the spring, in the winter, well, let's use spring for the example. In spring now, since March, all that trauma, all those experiences that have been trying on you, all that anxiety, all of that can be let go. And you start anew. You're reborn again at this new time. It's kind of like seasons change, and you notice that within the environment around us. And that's how you have to start taking a look at your worldview and how you live your daily life and your day-to-day experiences. Because come Monday, you're born again. Now everything starts fresh. So you have a whole nother season to have a whole bunch of bad experiences. No, I'm just kidding. You can have a whole bunch of renewed experiences that will generate a lot of happiness, health, help, and understanding. Those are the four main parts of your identity that you need to focus on: happiness and health. So I'm going to try to skip my slide. Do I just click on it? Oh, here we go. Okay. Now, when I say Namakota, Namakota means I am Nakota. And Nehao means I am Cree. Now, Ochete Shikoi Oyate is where I would actually, that is the nation. That is the great nation that I would actually stem from. The Ochete Shikoi Oyate is made up of 7 different nations. And those nations include the Lakota, the Dakota, and the Nakota. What I'm trying to explain here is the idea of diversity. Now, when we think about diversity, we usually think about in a broader context. Now, I'm going to take that broader context and focus it on diversity within diversity. So, in my job right now, I work as a cultural diversity Indigenous relations advisor, and I think that's a fitting title because the importance of recognizing diversity amongst Indigenous people is something that is overlooked time and time again. Even with the term reconciliation, truth and reconciliation, everyone has their own stories and are their own identities. But if you ever wanted to have a simplified understanding or an example of why this diversity amongst Indigenous peoples is so important, if you were to take, for example, let's say we all went on a trip to, let's go to Hong Kong. Okay. Unless you could speak, I don't know if it's Mandarin or Cantonese, you would definitely be in a position that made it difficult to communicate. And that is exactly how Indigenous peoples have to look at it. You take a tribe, there's over 600 First Nations in Canada. There's over 57 different languages spoken within those Indigenous tribes. Now, if you take someone from the East Coast and put them on the West Coast, they're going to have trouble learning each other's dialects. But one thing we can communicate through is our worldview, which is the environment that we live in. And that diversity brings us together by utilizing how we live off the land, how we understand the river, why water is life. We say in my language, which means water is life, water is sacred, water is holy, because water is the most important thing to sustain this life. Excuse me. Now, I was talking about health, happiness, help, and understanding. When we talk about health and the quality of our health as individuals, and you need to be able to understand that yourself before you can start helping others, before you can start moving towards this term called reconciliation. It's always funny to me because reconciliation, every time I hear that term, I remember my grade 4 reconciliation because I went to a Catholic school and I remember going up to communion and doing reconciliation. It's like, oh, I got to talk to the priest now. And reconciliation is reconciling all the wrongs that you did, you know? So it makes sense to call the term reconciliation, but I always think of grade 4 and going into that little cubicle and having to say, get my penance, to say 10 Hail Marys or whatever it may be. But for us, and in the terms of reconciliation, with building better relationships, creating a healthy environment and a healthy world that we live in, what we have to do is we have to have that balance, the balance amongst the emotional, the spiritual, the physical, and your mental. So we all need emotional health. All need emotional happiness. We all need help emotionally, but we all need to understand where that hurt is coming from or where that sadness is coming from. And that weighs towards the spiritual side of it. So I don't go to church all the time. I do believe in a higher power. I tend to lean on my traditional ways of knowing, and whether that be smudging, whether that be going to sweat ceremonies, whether that be um, going to as many ceremonial activities as possible. That's what grounds me, and it keeps me rooted in that idea of spiritual health and spiritual happiness and spiritual understanding. I'm learning something every day, and excuse me, I had a little bit of toast before our presentation here. But I think it's very important for us to understand that we all need to find something that balances us spiritually. So whether that be running, whether that be reading, whether that be meditating, whether that be going to yoga, those are all something that can help your spirit feel alive. And I think that's the most important thing when we want to have that happiness and that good health. Now, physical health, obviously, we all understand the importance of physical health, and one thing that keeps me going is regardless of where my physical health is at right now, if I have a headache or if I sprain an ankle, I always try to remember that there's other people that are in far more um, unfortunate physical health situations than I am. And that's another thing that you got to keep in mind. We take a lot of things for granted here in our society, and I think one thing that an Indigenous worldview, an Indigenous perspective, and world frame of thought gives us is that ability to find the good in everything and being thankful and giving thanks for being able just to wake up and walk to your kitchen to make a cup of coffee. In January, I'll tell you something. In January, I actually it's kind of funny. This is one on YouTube, but I'll share the experience because it actually solidifies my point of being thankful. The night before, this was in January. The night before, I went to the store and I bought this ice melt stuff for our back steps and then the walkway and the front steps of the front walkway. And I pulled into my garage, parked in the garage, left it in the garage, and I thought, oh, I'll bring it in tomorrow. The next day, I went outside to go grab the ice melt. And what I didn't know was there was like freezing rain storm that happened. So when I walked out my steps in the backyard, the bottom of the steps, so it looked like the snow was melted. Like it looked like there was nothing there, like a shovel and there was no snow there. It was pure ice. I slipped on the ice and I cracked my rib. I broke my rib. I had to go to the hospital. I couldn't walk. And the irony was I was going to get the ice melt. But for almost a month, I had definite physical complications with trying to move around. I had a lot of pain, sleeping, those little things that we take for granted. It really made me have a lot of time to think and realize the importance of being thankful, which I've always been taught. I've always been told we have two ears, we have two eyes, we have one mouth. So we need to watch twice as hard, listen twice as hard than we speak. So um, it's a great way to be able to take a step back and understand how we can be thankful for many things, and that all actually balances out with the mental health of ourselves. Being having that balance emotionally, spiritually, and physically gives us confidence. It gives us the ability to feel good about ourselves. And more importantly, the ability to want to learn and want to understand and ask for help when we need help. A lot of the times, a lot of us, myself included, go through experiences where we don't want to share because we don't feel confident. Now, if you feel confident, you ask for help. The best example I could give is if you have young children in your life, they have no inhibitions. They will ask for help. They will ask to understand. They, they will call you out if you have a booger in your nose. That's how pure we need to think. That's why the children is what we call the wikayaju. So that's why all it's for the child, and every child matters. And because their way of thought, their way of thinking is pure. It's not been tainted by anything that we've endured or seen or witnessed as adults because their minds are so pure. They are the most holy, they are the most respected, they are the most important in our society from an Indigenous worldview. Okay, I'm going to break it down to Saskatchewan because we were talking about the treaty where everybody's calling from, where everybody's participating from. Now, in Saskatchewan, prior to contact, there was 5 original Indigenous tribes, nations. That was the Cree, the Dakota, Nakota, Saulteaux, and Dene. They're spread out across the land. The Dene are primarily in the north. The Saulteaux or the Anishinaabe, they are generally, or Nakone, you could say, in the southern parts of the province. Dakota and Dakota. The Dakota and Nakota now they are part of the Chetishikoi. They transcended a lot of these nations transcended those colonial borders that we recognize as provincial borders or federal borders or U.S. Canada international borders because the territory ranged. So now I have I have relatives south of the U.S. border that go down into Montana, over to North Dakota, as well as past the Alberta border, Alberta Saskatchewan border, over into the Rockies. So there was a vast territory that was utilized. So when these borders came to be, it made it a little bit challenging for these Tioshpais or communities to gather together. And one gathering spot was Cypress Hills. So if you've ever been to Cypress Hills, I I applaud you on that because it's beautiful territory, but more importantly, that is a very sacred point for a lot of Indigenous tribes within this region and in Alberta's region. So that would be a meeting place. So there is a massacre site there of my people. That's called the Cypress Hills Massacre Site that happened on June 1st. I think it was 1873. And that is where there was a group of wolf hunters and they were just hunting and they came across some village, a tribe of Nakota, and they killed them. There's no simple way to put it. They just massacred them. There was children, there was grandparents, there was men, and Now you can go see that massacre site. It was finally recognized. It took over 100 years, but the federal government finally recognized it as a place of a massacre site. So there's a big sign there. It's a heritage site now, and it's someplace we like to travel to in order to be able to just go there, pay some respect, and recognize that our society, no matter how bad it is with this racism and stuff, is definitely far better than it was prior to the 1900s. And that's a peace of mind that we can take away as well. I think that's the importance of recognizing that it could be worse for a lot of us. So, oh, I could just scroll my mouse. Look at that. Learn something new. There's another Indigenous teaching right here. So everything is circular. As you can see in this medicine wheel, for my people, we can use black. We use 4 different colors. You'll see different colors in different medicine wheels. I know that Nehia use blue. The Dakota, Lakota, and Nokota use black. So we use black, red, yellow, white. And it was believed that these different colors represent the different nations in the world. Okay, so black, red, yellow, and white. We all have different gifts. We all bring something new. I won't share the teaching behind that. I'll just tell you that all of us together, we contribute to society and the world we live in by bringing something positive to our environment. I want to emphasize that we as human beings, we are all good. We all have good, but we all have bad. We are the good and bad. And just to take it back to finding this balance of health, happiness, help, and understanding, that's the important thing we need to focus on when we want to bring out the good in everyone. So these 4 colors, black, red, yellow, white, those are specific for my own personal beliefs and my own culture, my own Indigenous worldview, which is that of the Ochete Shikuyo Yate. And everything is circular. Now, I'm showing a picture here of this wonderful university called First Nations University of Canada that gracefully took me in as a student, a troubled student, turned scholar, turned academic, turned presenter in my kitchen because of a pandemic. Now, what we're doing here is this is just a gathering of different students of all ages, young to old. Now, you can see there's the lieutenant governor in the middle there, the former Lieutenant Governor Von Schofield. Now, when I say everything is circular, the Indigenous worldview is everything. That's your belief. So if you take a look at a circle, from the day you're born, you learn something. The first thing you learn when you enter this world is you learn how to breathe. And babies actually are learning constantly. They just listen. They can see everything. They're exploring with their eyes and their mind. And the belief is we'll learn something like that every day. If your eyes are open and your ears are open, you will learn something new every day. Like I just learned that I could just use my scroller on my mouse to shift the slides. I learned something new. And I'm thankful for that because I was looking for the little icon in the corner every time. Now, it is believed until the day that we die, to the day we pass on. And our other belief is all we have in this world is our skin. That's the only thing we truly own. And that's the only thing we have to offer. Because our spirit leaves to our home where we came from because we are believed we are part of a star. Now we talk about, I'm sure you guys have heard star blankets, like or seen star blankets or designs of star blankets. Those stars are very important to us as Indigenous peoples because it is believed if you've ever been in this building, First Nations University of Canada, in the atrium, there's a large star on the floor, and that's called a Dakota star. And the Dakota star is believed by our people when you feel alone and you're feeling overwhelmed and you feel pressure of just the day-to-day perils of life, you're to walk outside, and when you look at those stars, you have to remember you're being blanketed, you're being covered by all of our relatives. So that's what the star means, and that is something that is very important when we talk about understanding that things can be worse. Now, I'm just going to give you a little background about my position here. So I work with internal and external groups. I say First Nations and Michif. The reason Michif, for those of you that don't know, is the original term for Métis. Now, Michif, I guess prior to our, I guess prior to the Indian Act changes or the 1985 Indian Act changes or the repatriation of the Constitution in 1982, um, Michif or half breed was the term that was used. Now, Michif is the actual language, just like Nakota is the language, just like Cree Nihil is the language. Um, Michif is the language of the Métis. So that's why I put it up there on my screen. But we also have African communities, Latino communities, Jamaican, Middle Eastern. There's a number of different communities we have within our own areas that we reside, whether that is in Warman, whether that's in Saskatchewan, Prince Albert, Swift Current, wherever you are today. We have a number of different newcomers to this land. And I think it's important for us to understand that each of us have something similar. You know, we all have similarities. So when we want to talk about building bridges, it's up to us to find those similarities, those cultural differences that are similar but represent who we are. Every culture has some form of dance. Every culture has some form of language. Every culture has some form of art. Every culture has some form of music, you know? And I think that's if we could take a look at those four elements of a culture that can help us build those bridges. But I think honestly the most important part of a culture is understanding each other's differences and accepting them. Now, if we wanted to build bridges and beliefs are different, that doesn't matter because at the root of it all is we are all people, we're all individuals. We have to respect each other. If you want to respect each other as equals, you have to respect people's beliefs, and you cannot impose yours on them because we've seen throughout history that doesn't work. We have a lot of conversations that are going to be happening in the future that we will probably see in the media. I'm not saying I'm a part of them. I'm just saying there's going to be a lot of different dialogues that have started, which are very important to us moving forward in this quote unquote term of reconciliation. Okay, just a little bit about Regina. I work at Mama Waitson Center. I wanted to show so there is if you needed to reach out for anything, you can contact me there. But we have different gathering spaces, and I think what you guys need to do is find have conversations around how can you build these bridges, have spaces, gathering spaces together, so it can be used in parks, neighborhood centers. Um, and there's an example of the star right there, the Dakota Star, at the Mama Wet'suwet'en Center. Now, Mama Wet'suwet'en is it's Scott Collegiate. If you're in Regina, you know Scott Collegiate is in North Central Regina. If you know it, Scott Collegiate, North Central, the worst neighborhood in Canada, is actually the best neighborhood in Canada. I don't know where, if you haven't been there, you can easily talk stuff about it, but it's a really cool neighborhood. There's a lot of community there. Now, that star represent that I was talking about is right there. But Mama Wet'suwet'en is a Nehiyot term. It's a Cree term that means coming together. So we can all come together at that space. So you need spaces. You need to find spaces. You need to find those right individuals to help put those spaces together and build those bridges so you can establish a well organized relationship building process, whether that be personally, professionally, in your spare time, extracurricular, whatever it may be. Now, there's the inside of the First Nations University, and this is a round dance. If you've never been to a round dance, it is a beautiful, beautiful experience, and round dance season will be happening soon. Oh, excuse me. Now, oh, excuse me.
Oh, Brad, I see that you've just muted yourself. Sorry.
Hello?
Are you perhaps? Oh, there we
There.
go. You're back. There you
Sorry.
go. We can hear you now.
Hello. Yes?
We
Are
can
we
hear.
good?
We're good. We can hear you
Okay,
now.
good, good. Yeah, I don't know what I did.
You're just
Apologies.
leaving us in suspense, just building to the moment.
Thank you for that. So yeah, back to my point is around dance, the experience of that is you can see how a space for round dance can build bridges amongst different cultural backgrounds and different individuals. And it's just a great learning experience. What it does is it eradicates stereotypes. So what we have to do in order to build healthy, that healthy happiness, emotional, spiritual, physical, and mental happiness, that help understanding is ask questions. We have to ask questions um, in order to be able to learn from each other. What does that do? It gets rid of those prejudices. It helps eradicate racism. But most importantly, it brings those people together to build lasting relationships. Okay, now just a bit of knowledge here. Like I said, you're going to learn something. So if you don't learn anything else after this hour is done, you'll learn something here and you can be like, I learned something new today. Now, the Western versus Indigenous approach. So if we were to take a look from an organizational structure, what do? We send an email, we inquire, we draft an LOU or a contract or an agreement. We ask for a social insurance number, we process payment, mail a direct deposit. That's when you hire a consultant. Now, for First Nations people, our consultants are knowledge keepers. Our consultants are elders. And what we need to do is flip that dynamic and that spectrum from one way of thinking to another way of thinking. The proper approach would be introduction in person. Even a phone call right now in these times, it's if you could get a phone call to someone who knows an elder that can make the introduction for you, but at the same time, follow you, bring you along with the process so you understand it. You would offer tobacco. People always ask, well, where do you get tobacco from? You could get it from 7-Eleven. And there's no special tobacco because of this commercialized industry we have now. Traditionally, the tobacco would be grown, it would grow naturally everywhere. But now we have an industry that has created an opportunity for anybody to have access to tobacco. So I think you could take advantage of that. You be clear in your request. Your request, say, I would like you to do a blessing or an opening prayer for a meeting. You offer that tobacco. They say yes. Great. They're going to do it. If they can refuse the tobacco, then that's all right. That doesn't mean that they don't want to work with you. Maybe something else came up. There's always other people that can do that stuff, but be clear in the request, specific. Pray for, I want you to pray for this new committee that has started. This is our first meeting. We want to ensure that we are hearing the right things and we are finding the right outcomes that we're looking for. That's clear. Don't say just bless this meeting because they won't know what they're praying for. Um, so compensated cash or a check. Don't ask for a social insurance number. You got to remember these elders don't they don't live in the city. They don't do taxes the normal way that we would do. They are what we would say is um, they have obstacles in their life that don't allow them. They don't live in the city, so how can you just go to a bank and cash a check? The biggest thing though is don't ask for a social insurance number because when we take a look at these consultants that we hire, when we put out tenders or whatever it may be, looking for a specific consultant, they have they have a large organizational structure for them in order to be able to process this stuff and do their taxes. And we pay a lot of money for these consultants. But when you take somebody that is an elder or knowledge keeper who is a ceremonial knowledge keeper, how long does a doctor go to school for? 10 years? These people have been practicing for 20, 30, 40 years these ceremonial ways without writing them down, without doing it. We never write anything down. So we actually have to learn from our experience. It's experiential. So they have a vast knowledge that once they leave this earth, there's a lot of knowledge that leaves with them. So we have to treat them like they are very important people with that knowledge. So that's why we would compensate them in something that would be equivalent. You know, if you're paying $1,500 for someone to come in and speak about something specific, whether that's water management or infrastructure capabilities or engineering, treat a ceremonial elder as somebody that can do that stuff too, because they are talking about something only they know about. And it's a privilege for us to be able to hear it. And that would be what I would actually wrap this up with by saying the conclusion is we'll have a better understanding of multicultural identity within your organization, within yourself, multicultural heritage, our roles as individuals within the scope of, I throw UNDRIP in there because that's the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, which is International Day of the Indigenous Peoples on August 9th. That's the next big day. I know that because it's my birthday. And from an Indigenous perspective, resources are people, not reports. So with that, I say thanks for taking some time. I want to end with this story about I'll give you a good quality experience. I'm just going to stop sharing. Can you just see my screen now? Yes? Okay. My story is in grade 9, I was walking to the store with some friends. And these friends, there was about 8 of us. And we used to go to 7-Eleven every day at lunch. We'd walk from Miller to 7-Eleven. And there was 8 of us trying to pack onto a sidewalk. So now this is my health quality moment right here. If you want good physical health, walk in a structured, organized line that is made of quality. Because Pat Falestine, if he's on this call right now, Pat Falestine was with us. We were walking down the sidewalk and we were all trying to pack onto the sidewalk. There's 8 of us and we're all trying to squish and we're talking and I was talking like this and I don't remember what I was saying, but all of a sudden I just remember holding my head and everybody freaking out because I walked into a sign. And we all, but the quality of our team walked with me to the hospital because I had to get a little stitch on my forehead. But I wanted to bring this up because I was thinking about me and Pat and myself in high school, and I'll always remember that because all of them wanted to come into the hospital with me, and I only got to choose one friend. Unfortunately, it wasn't you, Pat, but you're still right here in my heart. With that, I guess I'll open it up for, I'll turn it back over to Chelsea.
Thank you so much, Brad. You are just so easy to listen to. I wish that we had booked you all day because I could sit here and listen to you share your stories and your experience, but also your wisdom. I love how you just integrate those two things so lovely. So thank you so much for sharing your time with us. We'll invite folks to, we have a few minutes left for questions, so we'll invite folks to share those in the chat for Brad. I know that Jocelyn is just bringing up our slides. We just have a few closing slides as well. So just to kick us off here. Oh, there. So Patrick, who now works in our shop at the Health Quality Council, and Brad actually grew up together. So there's some interesting interplay here between the two of them that he's like, oh no, what's Brad going to share about my younger years here? But thanks for your question, Patrick. You note that many people are scared of approaching an elder for fear of doing it wrong. So what advice or suggestions do you have for folks who are really wanting to do things in a good way, in the right way, but are really hesitant to mess things up or to do it wrong? What advice would you offer?
That's an awesome question. Um, I'm actually just going to say there's no wrong way of approaching an elder as long as you're introducing yourself. The only thing that would be like introduce yourself. That's the most important. And if you feel uneasy and it is something that is new to you, that's a good feeling because we tend to stay in our safe zones, and I'm going to say this, the most difficult conversations and those uncomfortable feelings that we have in conversations when we're talking about reconciliation means that we're doing something right. It's not going to reconciliation can't be like, okay, I feel great. I just handed out $5 to somebody that is unfortunate. No, that doesn't work. So to answer your question, Pat, it is it's very humbling to approach an elder. First of all, just the knowing that the want is there and the need is there is very important. Do not feel any inhibitions. Don't feel like there's a right or wrong way to do it. I'm going to take it back to what I was talking about. Children will do anything. They will ask for anything. There's no right or wrong way. I mean, you got to look at it like that. It's like if you have kids and they're learning how to speak English, do you get mad at them if they say things wrong? Like, you don't say catsup. It's ketchup. I'm telling you, you do not say that stuff because we're understanding, we're empathetic. That's exactly how an elder would be. If they don't know, if you're, but as long as you're sincere and you really do want to talk to them and approach them, just approach them like that. They're not going to scold you for saying things wrong. And I'll just throw this out there just for Pat though. If you guys if you need some insight on how to do that, get Pat to contact me and I'll help you guys out. No, I'm just joking. Definitely feel free to reach out to Chelsea or someone, and I'd be more than happy to introduce you to some different organizations and different individuals that are there to specifically help these bridges that we're talking about, regardless of where you are in the province.
Thanks so much, Brad. Yeah, and I think that you summarized it so nicely, where it's really being intentional with your intent, and I think that intent shows through in conversations and how you prepare yourself. So lots of thank yous coming through in the chat. And Tanya's good point that it's about moving to getting comfortable with the feeling of uncomfortable, because that's what reconciliation is all about, is doing things different and in a new way, and in doing so often makes us uncomfortable. So that's great feedback and wisdom to say, if you're doing something in a different way and it feels uncomfortable, then you're probably moving in the right direction.
Yeah, and I noticed I was taking a look. There's so many. The chat screen is so small, but there's so many people in the chat. So if you miss something, I noticed an LOL from Neil. I just want to say, hey, Neil. Neil Petrich. Good day.
Fantastic. Well, with that, I see that we're closing in on the end of our time. So this is the small gift of thanks that we have for you, Brad. So you'll have these lovely, bright I Love QI socks on your way to use shortly. As a small,
I love it.
and we'll invite you to tweet out about them the next time that you're wearing them.
Oh, I will.
Thank you.
That's
And
exciting.
so this is our note of enticement for others who would love to get their hands on a pair of these socks. So if you're interested in sharing with our learning community on QI Power Hour, we invite you to reach out. So you can find on the website, Jocelyn's going to share a link in the chat to a form you can complete, and we'd love to hear from you, and we'd love to hear your story. Just in the spirit of continuous quality improvement, you will notice that at the close of this session, a prompt will pop up directing you to a survey, an evaluation survey. We love feedback. We love how we can continue to take this offering to the next level. So we would love to hear your thoughts on the session today. You will notice that you'll get this pop-up that appears, just indicating that you're being directed to an external site. Not to worry, it's safe. You're not going to get a virus or anything. So we'll just invite you to click through, continue to complete that survey. And just a next note about our next session coming up, our last session before we break over the summer. So it's coming up on Friday, July 9th, same bat time, same bat channel from 9:30 to 10:30 Central Standard Time here in Saskatchewan. And we'll be joined by Randall Bell, who will be sharing with us some of his work with the Alberta health system, and specifically on the construct or the experience of patient journey mapping. So he's worked on a number of different projects using this methodology to really start to get at some of those root causes of mental health and substance use disorder among those suffering from those. So we'll invite you to sign up for that. Jocelyn will share out the link where you can get your virtual seat. And with that, I see we've taken you to time. So thank you again so much for joining us, Brad.
Yeah, I wanted to say, so there is a question here, Heidi, do I talk to high school students? Yes, all the time. If you guys wanted to reach out or wanted to reach out to me directly, please inquire for my email. Chelsea has my personal email, and I will respond to you in a timely fashion as long as it's not June 21st. Okay.
Thanks for
Enjoy
putting that
National
offer out there,
Indigenous
Brad.
Heritage Month. Yes.
Excellent. Well, thank you, everyone. Thanks for sharing your time with us. Wishing you a happy Friday and a safe weekend. Take care, everyone. See you again next month.